Welcome to another episode of the Edmonds Mom's Room podcast. Today I am joined here with an expert in humans.
Oh,
yeah. Human psychology, really counseling. We're going to talk a little bit about counseling, human relationships, maybe dive into a little bit of marriage and fun things. So thanks for being here, Hillary.
Yeah, thanks.
Tell us a little bit about yourself and then we'll dive right in.
Yeah, so my name is Hillary. I am a licensed marriage and family therapy associate in the state of Washington. And I live here in Edmonds. I love it here. And I'm just trying to be a business person and help people and keep my family together and everything. So that's kind of what I'm doing right now.
I love that.
But, yeah.
So we had a really cool conversation. I think this was like 2 or 3 months ago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I was telling you about this book I was reading about marriage and families, and I was like, it really helped me change my perspective. And you said one thing that I was like, genius. It was so amazing. You're like, oh, the key to successful marriage is the ability to change your perspective. And I was like, oh, that's all I had to do? But no, really, I think that was such a golden ticket. And I was like, we have to get you on the podcast. Like, let's talk about relationships. I know you do like a lot of premarital counseling.
Yeah, well, so I do some premarital. I have a lot of different kind of like things that I've been trained in.
Yeah.
But actually right now I'm doing a lot of marriage counseling.
Love it.
In my practice.
Tis the season.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So let's talk about keeping these marriages together.
Yeah.
Is that the goal?
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's a big question.
I know. I have to say this too.
Yeah.
I just finished the book, The Value of Others. I think I told you I was reading this book.
Yeah.
And it's by Orion Tarabrand.
Okay.
So he's a man, and it's kind of like, it's a little an unpopular opinion.
Yeah.
And I feel like the book was not written for women.
Yeah, I remember you telling me that. Yeah.
But it was so good because it just gave me a different perspective. And at the end of the book, he's like, you get married, and all of a sudden you expect your partner to be your soulmate, your co-parent, your counselor, your sexual partner, and like they have all these roles that they're supposed to fill, but yet like we were never meant to have all of those, like not one person can be excellent at all those things or have all those jobs. So it's like, that is such an interesting facet to like look at marriage from that lens. I don't even know where I'm going with this, but I was like, it was funny to hear that yesterday and then to know that we're coming on here today to talk all about relationships.
Yeah.
And so tell us a little bit about, what people are coming for as far as like couples counseling goes. And
people that I see in my practice are coming for I think they come to me because of the type of therapy that I do is kind of geared toward like identifying negative patterns, like what do you do when you're just feeling like stuck in conflict or just like a cycle of just feeling like really disconnected. And that can be for a ton of different reasons. And I think that's mainly what people are coming to me for. It's pretty broad. I see a lot of different things happening. I think, I don't know if this is everybody, but it's true that when there's like a life cycle change, so like if you're going through a transition in your family, like adding children into your family, your kids are transitioning from like little kids to teenagers, or even like teens to out of the house, like any of those like family life cycle transitions, those are stressors. And I think people don't necessarily say, oh, we're going through a transition, that's why we're feeling stuck and so we need to go to therapy. It's like, I keep having the same fight with my partner over and over again, and we can never get out of it. Like, we never resolve this fight, and maybe it feels like one person doesn't even care about resolving it, and the other person's like, I must resolve this thing. Like, just even different approaches to, like, what do we do about conflict?
Yeah.
And I think that's a lot of times when people come, and then the more we kind of like dig into what's going on, a lot of times it's like, oh, you guys are actually going through a big life change right now. So no, there's a lot of stress. So no wonder everything is heightened and it's harder to like move through conflict. Or maybe there just is more conflict and that's overwhelming.
Right.
So yeah,
Is
that's
that
where people are
the
coming from.
so you are a perspective changer, I guess, or like you bring those transitions to light?
Yeah, I mean, like we talk about a lot of things.
Yeah.
So the type of therapy that I do is called emotionally focused therapy.
Okay.
I am getting training in it, so I'm not like a certified EFT therapist. Although that seems like it could be a goal for me because I really like the work that I do.
But regardless of your certification, this is what you use.
Yeah, this is what I use. This is like
Awesome.
what I'm being trained in.
Beautiful.
And this therapy, like there's a lot of different stages and all this stuff. But basically the number one, like first goal is, can we just try to understand what's going on here? Mm-hmm. Like, let's just figure out, what is this negative pattern? Like, what happens? What are the triggers? What's going on with each person? What's happening in between you guys? Like, what's kind of the outcome of like an individual getting triggered and like what happens kind of in the relationship. And part of that is actually, which this isn't for everybody, but part of the work is going back and seeing like, okay, like how were you raised? What kind of models of marriage or like relationships did you have? What other significant relationships have you had before this one? Oh, like how is all of that kind of like playing a role in what's going on in each individual person? And the idea is to kind of just like get perspective. Okay, what is actually happening here? What's happening under the surface? What's going on? Because what we see is like a reaction, but what we want to know is like, what is the root cause? Like that's, I think, what everyone kind of is like, but why do I do the way this? Yeah. Why do I do this? Why am I the way that I am? Like, why is my partner the way that they are? Totally. And so, yeah, there's just like a lot of kind of revealing that happens. And through that process, we can kind of like take a deep breath a lot of times. Yeah. And say, oh my gosh, okay, actually, my partner is not maliciously doing this to me. It's because that's actually just like how they did things in their family, you know? Right. Oh my gosh, I'm not super, super needy. I just had a really bad relationship experience in my 20s or whatever. Yeah. That now I have like this underlying fear that makes me like anxious if my partner can't talk about something right away or whatever. Yeah. So that's kind of like the perspective taking, perspective shifting, and also blame shifting, right? We always want to like blame someone, blame something. And the idea is like, shift the blame from yourself, from your partner. Can we just shift it to like this cycle that happens between you guys? Mm-hmm. Like that's really the thing to blame. Yeah. That's what we need to like fight.
So, I mean, that sounds wonderful, and I feel like that does diffuse the situation. Yeah. But all I can think about is my perfect marriage that I'm in. Mm-hmm. Yes. Total joke.
Oh my gosh, same. I'm in one too. Yeah. What's your secret?
Yeah. It's definitely really good. But for real, like how do you? And we all have our baggage, right, from like our past and how we show up in these situations and how we get triggered and even if we can own it and be like, yeah, it's how he's, you know, he loved his mother so deeply. Just kidding. Yeah. But really, you know, like, it's like those relationships. Yeah. So it's like so we recognize it, and there's obviously then so much onus on like having to shift that and like work through that. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So do people come to you? Because I could just see it being a brick wall. Mm-hmm. In a lot of spouses, right? Mm-hmm. Like, first off, I mean, if you get someone to sign up for marriage counseling, it's usually probably one partner more so than the other.
Yeah, like in some cases. Okay. In some cases, in my experience, maybe one person's driving it. Okay. But the other person is acknowledging that, this is, like, there's an issue, and I don't really know if this is gonna, like, fix it. Yeah. But I don't want that. thing to happen in my marriage anymore.
Totally.
So,
Yeah.
right. Because, like, I think sometimes in relationships, there's usually, like, one person who's, like, the one that's making things happen.
Right.
Like, I've literally had couples come in, oh, it was my idea, but, like, my partner executed it. And I'm like, actually, I don't know. That's just how things work in your marriage. Fine.
Yeah.
But, yeah. So, sometimes, yeah, maybe somebody is, like, not wanting to be there.
So,
I think
but
most of the time people
they
both
want
are.
the change. They want the solution, right?
Yeah.
They don't want to live in a life of chaos.
Yeah.
And you know, we always want our relationships to be better and more fulfilling, of
Yeah.
course. So how do you break down those barriers though? Like you get to those, and if you have an example, you can share it. But like, how? I guess my question is like, people have to want to change and to want to do the work when they come to you. So is there a secret sauce that you have to help show them that path, or is it is that not a fair?
I don't know if it's like secret. And I hate to be the therapist that's like, this is what my model says. Like, this is like what's perfect. But the way that I work, it's like that's step one is de-escalating, figure out what's going on.
Yeah.
Step two is how do we actually change the pattern?
Okay.
What do we do differently? And it can happen, and that's what happens in therapy.
Yeah.
Like bringing in what happened this week. Oh, you guys have been working through kind of like a difficult situation. What's the conversation been like about that? Oh, okay, you know, one partner usually like, well, this is what I'm feeling. Like, this is what's happening for me. And then we just work with it in session. We just say like, okay, can we slow this down? Like if that partner starts to, you know, get triggered or like get like emotional in session. Okay, wow, you're like getting emotional. Like what's happening right now? Can we just slow this way down so that we can actually identify what is going on? What's the underlying emotion? So we can help your partner see not just the reaction, but the underlying emotion. Like, what are you actually feeling about this?
Yeah.
What makes this so important to you that you are getting like escalated just talking about it? Okay, can we talk about that? Can we talk through that? Can you share that with your partner? Partner, what do you think when they shared that? It's really, it can be like so awkward.
Yeah. No,
to be honest.
Honestly, I love that though.
But it's like, it's choreographed, right?
Yeah. And I feel like you need that because in the home, when you're in the kitchen and you're making dinner for the children and that tends to be one of my triggers is like, you know, there's all triggers around the kitchen. Yeah. And so it's just fascinating, like, to be, because you can't have those conversations in the moment. And so to really pull out and to achieve like that level of like in-depth awareness. That's interesting.
And the idea is that like the more you have those kind of like specific like dedicated conversations in therapy that are de-escalated, you're actually understanding even more about your partner. You're going deeper into what's happening for them, what they need, what they do to like protect themselves when things get kind of scary. The more understanding you have, the idea is the more that actually translates to real life. Yeah. Like in your example, maybe it's just like, the kitchen and making dinner is just like not the time. Yeah. To like have a conversation like that. Okay, great. We're just never going to do that in the kitchen again. And if we do, and if something starts happening, we have so much awareness and so much practice from therapy that somebody can be like, hey, wait, actually just like, no, we're not going to do this. Let's just stop this right now. Yeah. Before it escalates. Yeah.
It's funny you say that because I always say, I'm not prime time right now. I'm not prime time. I can't have that conversation. Yeah. Like, or, you know, if it's like, I fade real fast at night and that is not my optimal like time to get into it with you about if I'm going to be rational and like you know, bring my best self to the conversation. So it's an interesting phenomenon. Yes. And his prime time is the evening. And so it's, we don't connect on the like our prime times. And so it's a hard, you know, shift of like making sure we can have those high value conversations, I guess. Need to happen more, of course. Yeah. But it's interesting to hear you say that. Like removing that from that conversation. Yeah.
Kitchen. Right, remove it from the kitchen. And I also like, I think a lot of people want to come and say like, give us tools, like tell us how to have, like not tell us how to have these conversations, but tell us when to have these conversations.
Yeah.
Make a solution for us. And I always just tell people, you know, if like that was really the thing, I see such intelligent people.
Yeah.
Like, no, you're intelligent. If that was what the issue was, you would have already figured it out.
Yeah.
You would have already figured out, like, oh, all we need to do is have this at a different time. It's not usually like the thing.
Right.
And only when, in my experience, like, and this is my personal experience too, like, only when you're kind of understanding what the dynamic is and that you just, all the different factors that go into the dynamic, can you say, okay, we know that this isn't good. Can we just, like, when do we just need to start putting something on the calendar at another time to have this? Okay, fine. But, like, that becomes a lot easier when you know, like, really why you can't engage in that other way.
Yeah.
And, like, what the issues are with doing that. I don't know if that makes
Interesting.
sense.
So schedule it.
I mean,
essentially.
I mean, that's what I would personally do, but, like, that's only because that is what works for my relationship.
Right.
I'm not really the therapist that's, like,
everybody needs
telling
to do this.
people, what to do.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm open to brainstorming, and a lot of my clients want to brainstorm in session. Okay, great. That's like you guys problem solving.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's just not really how I work, but that's okay.
Okay. So this sounds so good.
Oh yeah.
It sounds like we just talked about like the perfect marriage couple counseling session.
Mm-hmm.
But like behind closed doors, a lot of people don't like each other, or they not don't like each other. Like, of course, like you bond, you come in a relationship because you have the same values, or you find each other attractive, or you want to have children and breed together.
Yeah.
And then maybe people lose the value of the other person when that is gone, or they just can't find happiness with that. Like, I guess what I'm trying to say here is that sounds beautiful, but what about for the folks that there is so much rage, there's so much hurt, there's so much anger, there's so much, I guess, resentment would be the word.
Yeah.
What happens there? Same shit?
Yeah, I mean, kind of same thing. No, I mean, I think, like, okay, so this is wisdom from others, right, who are, like, training me. And kind of because I have questions about that, too.
Yeah.
Like, what happens when, oh, man, they're, like, this relationship is, like, actually the next step is divorce?
Yeah.
Can therapy work, right? And what's realistic to expect?
Yeah.
And I would what I've kind of gathered and what makes sense to me is that, like, hey, for like negative patterns, they reinforce each other, right? It just reinforces. So the longer something has been going on, yes, the harder it is to break it down, to de-escalate it, to do something new. Mm-hmm. It's hard. And it takes time. Yeah. And not through all sorts of circumstances, that's like not for everybody, right? I mean, I have my personal views about marriage.
Tell me about it.
Well, I mean, like,
I want to know.
Well, I mean, I think like marriage is a really important decision.
Yeah.
Yeah, like one to not be taken lightly.
Absolutely.
That's just my perspective based on my history.
Yeah.
And then, you know, I kind of have this thing where, like, I met my husband, and then I decided 8 months later that I wanted to change my career. I was in, like, corporate advertising, and having so much fun, and, like, making money, and not, like, having to really work super, super hard. Sorry, love you guys. I worked hard, but, like, you know, it was, like, fun and not so challenging for me at the time.
Right. Easy money.
It was not like so easy, but it was like, you know, it was anyways, a good career, and it was great. And then
stable to entrepreneur.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and then 8 months later, I'm like, hey, actually, I want to go back to school and become a marriage and family therapist. And we have a funny story about that. I won't share, but like, he was like, okay, yeah, totally. And then he's the type of person that he doesn't, when you tell him this is my goal, he just like doesn't let you not do your goal.
Oh.
Like, okay, you know what I mean? Yeah.
I wouldn't know anything about that.
It makes him a good coach. It makes him a good coach, right? He like
sure.
really holds you accountable. So anyways, I don't really know where I was going with this other than like,
well, we want to know as much of your story as you're willing to share.
Like,
because
where was I going? This is like the importance of marriage. So, you know, then we take this journey and then it, you know, I'm in school, we're about to get engaged, and there's a lot going on. But I was like, I don't care anything else about this wedding. We are going to premarital counseling. Not because I think there's something really wrong with this relationship, but we both are kids of divorce, and I know the statistics.
Right.
And we've got stuff that we are aware of, that we're talking about, but like we gotta have somebody in our like arsenal, right, to help us. And I have to say it was the best money we spent as part of our wedding planning, and it was like a drop in the bucket in comparison to the other stuff. But it was the time, you know, that we dedicated. And so I think, and this isn't to say that like I have the best marriage of all time, but that this is the perspective I'm coming with, like somebody who I'm like, I just really want this to be good, and I want this to work. And I want the tools, and I want like, you know, the arsenal. Like I want this therapist in my back pocket, so when we do go through like a big life transition and it rocks us, I want to be able to go to somebody to help. So that's my perspective on marriage. That like it is work, but it's worth it, and I don't think it's not a decision that like should be taken lightly. Yeah, my perspective. That's just like not everybody's reality though. That's not how like a lot of marriage relationships like come to be. Like my husband and I were a little older when we got married, so that was not like old, but you know, just like older than some of our friends. Yeah. We had other things going on. Anyways, so back to the question around like, is it ever too late? Yeah. I don't think so. Yeah. That's not like, I don't think I would be doing my job, and like, you know, holding hope for my clients if I didn't really believe that like, yeah, like marriages can be saved, but that's not necessary, but it takes two people. Right. Right? Yeah. And it takes a lot of like intention and a lot of dedication, especially if things have been really hard for a long time. Yeah. Because that takes time maybe not an equal amount of time. Yeah. But it could take years. Yeah. And that's just not necessarily like not everyone has like the ability to dedicate years. Totally. I will say, I think I told you about this, but there is a type of counseling, like if you are, or somebody is in a real spot where you're like, I just need to know if is this working, or is this gonna work, or is it not gonna work? Yeah. There is a type of couples counseling called discernment counseling. There are discernment counselors in the area. It's definitely a certification you have to get because it's a really specific, structured, like 5 sessions, really specific goals for each session kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But that would be really good for people who are like, I don't want to spend, or I don't have a bunch of years to spend trying to figure out if this relationship's going to work. I love that. Yeah. I want some clarity like soon. I don't know a whole lot about it. Anyway, that's kind of like all I really know about it. Yeah. Other than, it's a short-term thing to help couples discern. Like, are we in this?
And so once they go through discernment counseling, that's when then it's like, okay, if we're in this, we want to save this.
I think some people could do it that way. Some people do it the opposite way though. Like, we've been in couples counseling for so long.
I see.
It's not, getting stuck or whatever.
Yeah.
And then we transitioned to discernment counseling to really make sure, like, are we going to end this?
Yeah. No, that's great.
So
that's a very valuable. That's valuable.
But I
to
do
know.
think that if you're somebody who, or if you're in a, you know, partnership that's like, you don't really know and you kind of just want a good check-in, that would actually probably be a good place to start.
Okay. Or with you.
I mean, or come to counseling, or come to couples therapy and see like, oh wait.
If we just understand each other,
If
maybe.
we just did that better, if
Yeah.
we just like had a different perspective, maybe it would be, maybe we wouldn't feel so hopeless.
Yeah. No, I love that. I absolutely love that. It's interesting to sit here, you be like, you're a kid of divorce, so then you went into your marriage with a lot more, or not a lot more, but a lot of intention to like ensure that this is.
You could say intensity too.
Intensity. And he still signed up. Okay.
You've never met Sean. He's really intense.
Oh, he was the intense one.
We're both intense.
Okay. Okay.
So, yeah.
See, I'm the one that holds the intensity. Dylan calms it down.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
Yeah. But that's nice. Okay, so you guys both brought the energy to the marriage.
Yeah. Yeah.
Full force.
Mm-hmm.
No, that's great. But it is such a reality. Like 50% of people get divorced. Right?
I think it's over.
Over 50%. Probably half of those people are unhappily married, I would assume.
Yeah.
To some degree.
Think there's a lot of unhappy people.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have like, which is sad.
Yeah.
Right? And I think it's not just a work of like a couple. Like you have to be invested in your own self in order to be able to have a joyful partnership, of course.
Yeah.
So, knowing most people are unhappy in this lifetime probably suggests that like maybe about 10% of people are happily married. I don't know.
Oh, I don't know. I would actually love to know that.
Would that be a cool survey or
I hope it's higher than 10%.
Well, I hope it is too, because then it's like, what are we even doing in society? Like,
yeah,
why?
I know. Well, oh, gosh, and it's a hard thing for like just to even like think about, because I'm thinking about how, you know, as humans, we are just not meant to go through life alone.
Totally.
There are some people that do, but as a species, like we are not meant for isolation. We're like meant to be in community.
Completely.
Like the family, I'm a huge fan of the family, and obviously I'm a family therapist, but like I just firmly believe like we are like born into these systems like because we are meant to be in community.
Yeah.
Right? We're meant to have close relationships and be in community because life is really hard.
Yeah.
And we need people.
Yeah.
Like we need our significant other, but that you were saying something earlier, and I was thinking about this. Like, we also need support outside of our partner too.
Yeah.
Like, our partner isn't meant to be like everything.
Right.
Right?
They're not meant to be our psychologist, our business coach, our
No.
right? Our sexual partner, our everything. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. No, it's truly, I think that's an important delineation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Probably for success.
I think so. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's like so much I could say. And it's hard because I can like say something, but then people are like, but if I'm like, how do I get community? Right? And that's a really hard question to answer.
I think that has to do with what do you feel like you have the deepest connections with. I mean,
Yeah.
a lot of that. It's so interesting to hear you say this about community, and like then to say that your family is your community, because I actually never, hearing you say that is a huge eye-opening thing for me.
Oh.
To hear that. I don't know why I don't think of my family unit as a community, but you saying it and like labeling that as a word of community, I'm like, oh, you're so right.
Yeah.
Like, and actually that alone is just like a really good shift for me to work on finding more fulfillment within that. And like support, not that I don't support my family unit, but like I could definitely do a better job. And I think just like hearing you say it that way is a really beautiful shift for me. So thank you.
Oh, yeah.
And then the other thing I was going to mention, as far as your like community goes, when they do studies, there was a study, and I can't remember the name of the study. I'll have to look it up. But there was a study about like total health and like the healthiest people at the
Yeah.
end of their lives.
Yeah.
Do you know, I can't remember the name of the study, but it was like they're in their they're older people, and they looked at like their total value of health and the people that had deep relationships, and it didn't mean that they had hundreds. It just meant that like if they had a couple close relationships that provided that deep fulfillment, they actually had their biometric markers, their health markers.
Yeah.
They were healthier people.
Yeah.
Because of those relationships. And I think that just speaks tremendously to that importance of community. And like, I think community as itself, and that's why I'm like, oh yes, family is community, it's that energy, right? Like you're, like from an energetic standpoint, like you're one source of energy, but when you have everybody's energy, that just amplifies.
Oh yeah.
That's the chaos and this noise in my house that like can be so triggering, but like truly, like it is, you know, like that is the amplification of energy. And I do think that that's where it's like, you're right. Like the value of like keeping the family together, the value of having that community is so important. And probably if you're like asking a mom that's listening to this podcast and she's probably wondering like, yeah, my freaking marriage isn't that happy or isn't that great. Of course there's good times and like we share certain moments and like we're doing this for the kids. But like, I think that there's a lot of people that desire more from their current marriage.
Yes.
And so I think to look at it from that perspective, like just to hear you shift that and be like, okay, you're right. Like it is worth every single second to make sure that we make our appointments at your office. Yeah. And just get in there. So we, you know, like there is a reason to keep it all together.
Yeah, yes, definitely. And I would just like there's a couple different things I want to say about this, but it is worth it, and not that, like I said, not every marriage is meant to stay together, and that's the reality of the situation, right? Like we were just saying at the very beginning, we're not perfect. Like, you know, we don't always make like perfect choices, and that's okay. And there are ways to like have really strong co-parenting relationships that really like help your kids and all that. Like so much. Like there's still like so much hope, right? Even in that situation. But it is worth it. And what I tell people, like parents who are coming to see me, not necessarily for parenting stuff, but like for marriage stuff. Yeah. I almost always, kids, like if they have children, if they want children, whatever, it always kind of like comes up, right? Like, because kids are stressful. Yeah, I don't have children, but I have younger siblings and a lot of cousins, and they're stressful. But I always tell these people, like, you are the leaders of your family. Like, you are. And this, like, the more kind of work and dedication you can put into your relationship, even if it is literally just showing up here 1 hour a week, that's better than 0 hours a week, right? Like, this is time.
So true.
You're saying, like, you don't have alone time, whatever. Okay, you know what? Here you are. You do have time. You have 1 hour. We're going to use that hour. You are the leaders of your family. You can do this. Like, the health of your relationship, like, needs to come first, so that you can be like the best parents to your kids.
Totally.
And that might just sound so obvious and like, okay, yeah, Hillary, like, you know, whatever, that sounds great, but what if this and what if that? Totally. There are a lot of barriers. There's tons of barriers to getting in to see a therapist.
But the reality is like, if you want it, you're going to do it. And like,
you will find
it's
a
the
way.
same thing with the fitness, right? Like, if you want to be in shape, like, you're gonna go to the gym. You're gonna find a way to work out or exercise. You know, I mean, I don't know if you do Zoom sessions, but like, that's also an option, right?
Oh, yeah.
And it's like, so you don't have to be in person. And this is funny because now Dylan and I, like, I think it started last year or 2 years ago. I was like, we're going on a date every single week. Like, that is what we're doing. Like, we're committing to like spending time together, and like, we'll have days. This is so TMI, but like, we'll have days where we like fight all day, and we're like, I don't want to spend time with you. Like, we're not gonna go. And then like, we go, and it's like This is all we needed to do.
Yep.
Like, but now you're making me want to shift our date night to counseling.
Well, I don't know if I recommend that. Like,
Okay, maybe we need to add date 2.
Another hour.
Yeah.
Like, I would recommend that.
No, that's good.
Don't take things away.
Yeah.
Add, you know. Yeah.
I'll be like, what are we doing? We're not going to the bar? Like, thought we were going to watch this game together.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I mean, that sounds like way more fun. Although I will say, like, there's a lot of laughter in my therapy office. So
yeah,
it's not all like scary and sad and bad. Like, it can actually be like joyful.
Yeah.
But I, like what you were saying, reminds me of like, oh, when there's that tension, when there's the fighting, when there's one person's feeling like, you know, really triggered or whatever it is, so often it's like, that's, if you can reframe like that type of behavior or those interactions as actually just like need for connection, so often that's what is needed.
Yeah.
Right?
Totally.
I mean, the negative cycle wants to take you guys apart, wants to like come in there and be like, no, like you guys gotta separate, disengage, disconnect.
Yes.
And the antidote is connection, and it's like so freaking hard when you're mad.
Yes.
Right?
Totally.
But I love that you guys just still do it,
Yeah.
because that shows that like, okay, we intuitively understand that we need this, and it's maybe part of why we're fighting.
Right.
Is that actually we do need to feel connected.
Completely. Yeah.
That's hard.
Yeah.
To do. But it's just like that counterintuitive thing. One of those counterintuitive things, like, oh, you know, I mean, it's like kids who are acting out, and you know, as a parent,
Right.
you know, like the acting out is like, I actually need more from my parent. Like, I need
Completely.
something from that I'm not getting,
Yeah.
that only my parent can give me.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, why can't you just say that to me? They are saying that to you.
Right. Just from a behavioral standpoint.
Yeah.
No different. Yeah. Such good insight. I love what you're dropping with us. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
It feels really good. And it's interesting, like, to like go back to that date night and like it, that is so, it's so clear. Like, to hear you put different words on it obviously takes me out of my perspective. And of course I'm always glad we end up going, and it's always funny how it does diffuse every stupid thing about like unloading the dishwasher or the dirtiness of whatever.
Yeah.
Like, it was never about that in the first place.
Mm-mm.
And so it is fascinating to hear you say, like, just continue, like, obviously lean into what is needed. But you know, and you hear people say, like, you have to do date nights with your partner, you have to connect, you know, but I think as a parent and as a mom, it's so hard. And like, in the beginning, when we had 2 kids, and we would get my mom to babysit, and we'd get my dad to babysit sometimes, and it just always felt like we didn't want to burden them unless we really had something good to do.
Yeah.
But then I had a mentor once, and this is when we started. He was like, we go on date nights at least once, a lot of times 2 or 3 times a week. Like, they leave their kids and go do this. And it's not always sexy. Like, a lot of times it's like they're scheduling their kids every, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, if he's going to do that, like, I can do one night a week. Like, and like, I mean, when we budget for it, like, it is in the budget now, and it is part of the system, and it's happening regardless.
Yes.
And I will say, though, like, until I saw someone doing that, it's hard to validate and hard to be like, is that worth it? Is that a sacrifice I want to make?
Right.
But like, the reality is, it is probably the one thing that has at least probably kept us together, right?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe we would have been, but I don't know. I think it is a huge aspect of the importance of like re-engaging, because when you have 3 kids, you're not talking at home at night. Like, there's sports going on, like there's hockey for one kid, soccer and basketball for the other, and then the other one's a floating kid right now because she's only 3. But like, you know, it's like the dynamic of like shifting everybody where they need to go with even our household helper, like, is hard, right?
Yeah.
And, like, there's not conversation happening between
you're
him and I.
logistics only.
Right. Logistics is the name of the game.
Yeah.
And so that's interesting. Like, it's just interesting to hear you like validate our time of like making that. And I do think, though, that like we're probably overdue for some family marriage counseling.
Maybe, yeah.
So
maybe.
Just the conversations that you don't want to have at the bar, maybe.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, right. There are probably always like deeper things that can be kind of talked about.
Yeah.
And I mean, I definitely have people who see me who are like, we're not bad. It's just that like things are kind of creeping in and we just don't want it.
I love that.
We just don't want that because we're trying to start having kids or whatever else. Like we know life is going to get crazy and so we want to figure these things out now.
Yeah.
Which is beautiful. Like I'm always just like so blown away by how intentional people are about their relationships. There are like two things I want to say about this. There's a statistic that I think it's like people wait an average of 7 years to go to counseling.
Wow.
Like from the time where they have an inkling that something is wrong and probably needs outside help. It takes like an average of 7 years in order, like before they actually seek help.
Wow.
So think about that. Like, it's super normal to put it off.
Yeah. And
feel like maybe we don't need this and we have so much else going on. Maybe we're not bad enough to go to therapy. I don't think there's ever like bad enough. Like, you know. So there's that, but then I always, like, here's another one. It's like, okay, so therapist costs, couples therapy in the Seattle area can be really, really expensive, but I mean, you can find a therapist for $150 a session. $150 per week for like a year.
I think we all
terrible
know.
at math.
Yeah.
But think about how much money, you know, a divorce lawyer costs.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Or even if you're not doing, even if you don't involve like a lawyer, but it's still like costly and expensive to break up a family.
So expensive.
Right? So anyways, that's not to guilt or shame anyone.
Totally.
It's just like your comment about the value of a date night. Yeah, it actually is incredibly valuable over time.
Right. Yeah, so we're probably saving money with the date
You're
night.
saving money.
We're saving money. Done.
Saving money. It's basically the cost per wear.
I love
like
it.
thing.
I love it.
Like,
yeah.
oh yeah, I can buy these $700 shoes because I'm going to wear them this many times, and
Yeah.
I'm saving money buying these shoes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I could see that. No, same thing with therapy. I mean, I think that way about pelvic floor therapy. I'm like,
oh yeah,
this is
I don't
gonna
have to
save
convince
you. This is going to save you the cost of a C-section, overnights in the hospital, and then let's talk about when you're 50 and you need that hip replacement, and 70 when you're in the diapers, and how much that costs, right?
Yes.
Like, I mean, I could go on and on and on.
Yes.
Prevention is the name of the game, and
Yes.
it sounds like you're saying the same exact thing
Yeah.
from a marriage standpoint.
Yeah.
So I love it.
Yeah.
No, that's great.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any other things that you want to leave us with?
No, I think I kind of said all my things.
I love it.
That I wanted to say.
I love where you took this. I love what you brought to the show, and I feel like people are gonna really. It's such a good listen. This is so important because you can be at any point. I feel like in your relationship, like there's highs and lows, right? Like, I mean, of course, most people are just happy-go-lucky all the time, but
Most people.
the highs and the lows are so for real, and I feel like
they are.
especially when you've been married and you have kids for over multiple years,
Yeah.
and maybe your partner's a long time before that.
Yeah.
And so I think like anyone can really find value in a lot of the perspectives that you shared with us. So thank you so much.
Oh yeah.
Tell us a little bit about your practice and where we can find you. How can we book you? All that good
Yes. So I am a LMFTA here in Edmonds. My practice is called Renewed Hope Family Therapy. And you can go to my website, renewedhopefamilytherapy.com.
Awesome.
And it has all the information there about me, my training, how much sessions cost,
Perfect.
who I treat. Like, I definitely work with a lot of couples. I also see families. I also see teens and tweens.
Awesome.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right, and you're accepting new patients?
Oh yeah. Mhm.
Okay.
I am.
Perfect. Perfect.
Yeah, I am.
Okay, we'll put your website in the show notes, and maybe if you have like social media hashtags and things like that.
I don't have social media.
Oh, okay. We'll put your.
But my website is.
We'll put your website
up
there.
and running.
Love that for you. Okay.
Cool.
Well, thank you so much for being
Thanks,
here.
Allison.
This was a fun episode.
Yeah, thank you so much.